This is the 2026 Chery Tiggo 4. If you're in the market for a new car, you've probably seen that brands such as JQ and Omoda have really swept the nation and are taking over in the sales charts. And that is part of Chery Group. And Chery are bringing their own cars to the UK. Bestsellers in many other countries, they're starting to really pick up steam here. And this promises to deliver a full hybrid family SUV at an entry-level price. With only two trims to choose from that are very generously spec'd, as you're about to see. This thing starts from just under £20,000 with a decent warranty as well. So is this the sort of car that you should spend your cash on? That's what I'm here to find out today. So please join me as I take you on a full interior and exterior tour of the Tiggo 4 and take it out on the roads to see what I think. So Chery, in just the 7 months they've been in the UK so far, as of recording, they've already sold nearly 14,000 units, and there's no sign of that slowing down, especially with JQ and Omoda as well as part of their group. As for specs and pricing, this is a full hybrid version, a 1.5 litre engine which is naturally aspirated at 95 horsepower, but combined it makes 204 horsepower with those electric motors. So the majority of the power is actually electric, and you'll find that when you're coasting around town, or if you've got it in eco mode, the majority of the time when you're even on the motorway, it will probably be just using the electric motors and effectively using that engine to charge that system. But it can initiate the combustion engine in intense situations when you really put your foot down. It's super easy to choose trims as well because there's only two options and they're very generously spec'd. The entry-level car starts at £19,995 on the road, and that has 17-inch alloys as standard, LED front and rear lights, driver's seat manual adjustment, 4-speaker audio system, and dual 12.3-inch displays with rear parking camera, dual zone climate control. My recommendation though would be spend the £2,000 extra to get the model I have here, which is the top end Summit at 21,995. This one has eco leather steering wheel and seats which are vegan friendly, heated steering wheel, powered 6-way adjustable driver's seat, 360 cam which is very good, an upgraded 6-speaker audio system, wireless charging pod, and front and rear parking sensors. It's a lot of extra kit for not a lot of extra money, and I think with obviously dealer contributions and things like that as well, you'll find that you'll get a great deal on the top end Summit trim. Combined MPG WLTP is around 53 miles per gallon, which as I say I have actually been achieving on my run today, and yeah, using the electric motors mostly around town, it's a very smooth driving experience. It's also very manoeuvrable thanks to a fairly tight turning circle, and as I said, the camera on this top end model rivals that of some much more expensive cars. So then the fact that this undercuts things like the Dacia in price is super impressive, and I'd like to know what you think of the styling. This is what they call their kind of diamond front grille design. It's quite a friendly looking car and it doesn't look particularly modern in my opinion, but it is fairly striking. So you've got that large diamond pattern with the Chery logo up front and the signature LED lights, so you can see there's quite a nice pattern in there, and then you get your LED running lights down the bottom. Nothing too crazy, but it is quite imposing on the road, and you get some nice kind of creases in the bonnet which you can see there, which make it seem a little bit more aggressive in stance. And it's a fairly short wheelbase car, quite manoeuvrable, and this top end trim still has a fairly generous amount of rubber as well. So as you can see, this is running 17-inch alloy wheels with fairly chunky tyres, so wouldn't be too terrible in terms of maintenance. And as we head down the side of the car, you can see fairly straightforward. It kind of reminds me of like some of the Suzuki cars with quite a squared off back and that kind of thing. It's a fairly modern looking car, but nothing too radical in terms of styling, I don't think. What they have made note of though is this signature LED rear light bar, which is really nice. You can get this across the range, and the Chery branding and badging across the back there. And you can see these reflectors are kind of built into these sort of haunches at the back. You get these kind of big muscular sides. They make a point of saying that they've really put a lot of time into making horizontal lines and making this look a bit more chunky at the back, and that's reflected in some of the other brand like the JQ and Omoda stuff as well. The JQs in particular are kind of a bit Range Rover-esque in their appearance, and you can see this one is designated with CSH, which is their super hybrid branding. You've got the reverse camera under there, you've got a rear wiper, and then you've got some nice creases along the top which make it look a little bit more rugged with those roof bars as well. I do like the rear light design. I do think it looks quite nice, and especially the fact that the indicators are built into this area here. And then down the bottom you've got some nice, you can see actually this one's got a little bit of a scuff on it, so you can tell with this particular sort of plastic down there, it's quite rugged. That's going to be quite easy to replace if things go a bit wrong and easy to rub scuffs out of and things like that, so quite practical as well. So yeah, in terms of styling, nothing too radical. I think the JQs do look better, they look more imposing and more expensive, but obviously this is a full hybrid, so it's more focused on the drivetrain, and also this is a smaller sort of B segment SUV anyway, so this is more in line with like your Ford Pumas and things like that. So stepping inside, you are greeted by a very pleasant interior indeed, with lots of decent materials, some brushed metal effect areas, some physical controls, and just a nice mix of kind of modern plush aesthetics. So on the door here you can see we have some actual kind of squishy plush pleather material up here, and also here this is all that kind of same thing. You've got some ambient lighting that runs across as well on the top end trim, and then you've got this kind of brushed, it's plastic but it looks like a brushed aluminium effect here. In the side here we've also got Tiggo branding on the speaker grille. Here you can just see there's a space for a bottle which has a little platform, and then some more space going back here. Not the best in class, but pretty good. And the door sills actually come right down, so you're not going to get muddy trousers coming out of there. That's a nice touch, especially in this price bracket. The seats in this top end trim are this kind of fake vegan friendly leather material with some nice contrast piping, which do look the part. These are kind of like quite sporty looking seats, but the actual material of them is really nice. They're actually quite plush and comfortable, and this feels quite hard wearing as well. And as you can see, we've got some storage in the center area with some power, so USB-C and A, and also a 12 volt on the other side. And this one is electric, so no lumbar adjustment with electric on this side, but you know, it's still not too bad. You get a bit of gloss black here, which I think might scratch up and look a bit nasty over time, but is actually a nice little touch. And then as you can see, materials continue in a positive way. We've got this kind of leather material on here with stitching. Even up here, this is like not a scratchy plastic, this is actually like a pleather material, which is nice to the touch, which is always really welcome. So let's step inside and I'll show you a little bit more around this interior, and you'll be pleasantly impressed. For this price, you know, we're talking about a 20 grand car here, and just look at how nice this looks in here. It's nice and spacious and airy thanks to the light headliner, but this kind of combination of this material here, this kind of like fake aluminium effect trim, and this leather with the stitching on the dash, everything feels really nice to touch. And you've got a vent that runs all the way along here. These dual displays, my only complaint here is that this slightly is obstructed by my driving position, but obviously your mileage may vary with that. But as you can see, it is a really nice design. This is a nice modern wheel, I think, and you've got some buttons on here. These are physical buttons, even though it's all one thing. It kind of, you press whichever one you want and then it figures out what you want to do. So they're not touch controls, don't be fooled by the design, which is nice. So like volume up, for example, nice and easy, volume down, and you can also customize this display slightly with this button here. So you press that and it will toggle what's going on over here. So 62 mpg at the moment, and it shows since reset, and also your tire pressure monitor and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think this is a really nice design. It looks the part, I would say, and everything's really well damped in here as well. So like the indicator switch, for example, really nice, and these toggles on here, it's just a really nice design and feels really high quality for the price. And as you can see, when I indicate, it comes up with a sort of blind spot camera with a 360 cam, which is really super useful. There's also a shortcut button on the steering wheel, which you can program to something of your choosing. For example, you can use it to change the radio station or even go to your ADAS stuff. And in the center area here, although this is a bit glossy, it does look quite premium, and the fact that there's these controls included is really welcome. So you've got a few toggles here for the main infotainment screen here. So you've got your drive mode select. So there's two modes, sport and eco. I would suggest leaving it in eco at all times. I'll explain why when we get out on the road. You've also got a button for the camera, which you can see here. We do have a 360 cam, so I can go into here and you can see I've got a 360 view that works quite well, a top down view as well. And yeah, it just works quite well. So there's a front cam, rear cam. You've also got the cameras for the side, so I can see where the wheels are. You're not going to curve the wheels. Really, really good camera system, especially compared to lots of other cars in this price range. I've seen much more expensive cars with worse cameras, so I'm super impressed with that. And also the turning circle is really good at low speed as well. Hazard switch, and then you've got your volume adjustments and power. And down here, this is kind of like a bit of a, almost like a Range Rover-esque or Audi-esque bit for your kind of climate. So this is all touch control, a bit like the Volkswagen stuff. but it works pretty well. It does also come up on screen, so you can then go into like seats and do your heated seat settings and stuff like that. So you can control it all on here if you want to. However, it is just as easy to do it all down here. It's just little touch sensors. It's nice that they exist. They're not physical buttons, but it's cool that they're there. And then you've got some decent little storage down here. Of course, the storage under there, but this is all super solid. Nothing is flexing or going weird at all. You've got a generously sized glove box, full size glove box in fact, which is quite rare nowadays. And this is also soft close, which is a nice touch. And then down here you've got a nice easy chunky gear select, so down for drive, up for reverse, which initiates your cameras, and then just press on here for park. Nice and easy to use. Some nice grippy large cup holders with like a rubber bit at the bottom, a wireless phone charger in the top end model, and then under here a nice large storage area as well, which does actually extend a little bit underneath the center console. So yeah, actually this is a really nice cabin in my opinion. And this infotainment system, pretty slick to use as well. Nothing too crazy, so you're not going to be blown away by it, but it's certainly better than some rivals. You can also set the regen a bit higher if you want to as well. You can turn the EV icon on so it shows you when you're in EV mode only. You can adjust some settings in here as well, so you can make it change the steering into the kind of more sporty mode and that kind of thing, link it to the drive mode. There's also a few other settings in there as well. So it's not particularly amazing, but it just gets the job done, right? So you've also got the option to unlock the car when you approach it with the keyless entry. You've got all of your ADAS stuff in here as well, which you can get a shortcut to, ambient light settings. So here's your apps that are built in. You can also download more apps and things like that, but most people are just going to be using Apple CarPlay, aren't they? Which is really straightforward, and of course means that you get a nice dual display feature there, so that is always a nice touch. You do also have a pull down menu with some shortcuts. So for example, your speed limit warning you can turn off with one tap here. Lovely stuff. And also a few other bits and bobs as well. Makes it nice and easy to get to, and it's a smooth system. This is all powered by a fairly recent Snapdragon processor, so you know that it's going to be nice and smooth and reliable. So you've also got two themes. So this one here is the classic theme, and then you've also got a streamlined theme. So there's a few different modes, and you can also go into night mode, which makes it all dark as well. So there's a couple of different things to choose from. Personally, I've just left it in the standard mode here. And you can also have a screen cleaning mode, so you press that and it stops the touch inputs, so you can clean things nice and easily. Just simple touches, that's quite nice. And this display here shows your basics, so when you're driving along you'll see kind of your lines in the road and whether you're straying over with the ADAS. You've got all of your speed warnings and stuff over there. So yeah, overall I'm super impressed with the quality in here. Everything just feels nice and plush and really easy to use, and the fact that there's a sort of a decent amount of physical controls as well as a nice slick interface, it just makes it a really pleasant thing to spend some time with. And also I'm just really impressed with the overall quality. For this price point, it really is very impressive. Up the top you've got a few toggles for your lights, you've got some very basic mirrors and things, and then up here interestingly there is a USB for a dash cam, which is nice and handy, isn't it? And then visibility out the back is not too bad. You've got a large C pillar, but you do have blind spot monitors on the mirrors, and of course the cameras are really good as well. So stepping into the back of the Tiggo 4, and actually it's a very generous space indeed. You do have a sort of bottle area in the door again. No fancy features back here, but you get the nice sort of effect and also the same sort of fairly plush materials. And it's a relatively flat floor back here as well, which is a nice touch because it means that kind of middle passengers and moving things around is going to be a bit easier. On the back of these seats you've also got a little bit of storage, again nothing too crazy. There's also a climate vent back here, and then down here we've got USB-A for power. Don't know why it's not USB-C, but there is also a little storage pocket there as well. It would have been nice to see a drawer though, or something like that for some additional storage. But yeah, the overall quality is really nice, and the quality of the seats extends back here. You've also got an area for Isofix, and the Isofix are sort of ones that you push under the seat, but they're little flaps that go under, so they won't come off and get lost, which is always good. And then in the middle you've got a armrest that pulls down with some cup holders. There's no grippers in there or anything, but it's nice that it's there. And also this is a 60-40 split, so relatively practical. So yeah, nothing crazy or groundbreaking, but there's a lot of space in here, and they've thought about a few of the essential practicalities. So stepping into the back of the Tiggo 4, and actually I'm pleasantly surprised, to be honest. At 6 foot, I've got this in my driving position and I've still got plenty of room for my feet back here. Although I would like a slightly steeper slope on the seat for my thighs, I do have long, gangly, spidery legs, so that's probably just a me problem, to be honest. Headroom though, really good. I've got somewhere for my arm, the seat is fairly supportive, and I've got a good view of the rest of the cabin. Yeah, it just feels like quite a comfortable place to sit and spend some time. And the quality and plushness of the seats is good too. I've even got a pull down armrest with some cup holders, as I showed you before. So actually, yeah, it's pretty generous back here. One thing I would say is, whilst there isn't really much of the transmission hump, it is a little bit awkward to sit in the middle for me. I definitely wouldn't want to be an adult passenger back here for any extended period of time sitting in the middle. It's just not wide enough for that, to be honest with you. So that's something I would certainly avoid. But for the little kiddies, it's going to be absolutely fine. And of course, the connectivity for ISOFIX and all that, yeah, really not too bad at all. The shape of the car does it justice, and I don't really have any major complaints, especially at this price. As for the cargo area, nice and simple. You do have a button under here. It is a manual tailgate, which is absolutely fine at this price range. And your parcel shelf is super easy to remove. It's just on little string hooks. So you just pop it one side, pop the other side, and then just give it a bit of a pull, and the whole thing comes out like that. So nice and straightforward. This is Velcro as well, which is handy. You can pop that to the side. And there isn't really a proper space for it under there, but you could kind of stow it elsewhere in the cabin if you wanted to, or obviously just lay it flat. So it's not too much of a big deal, but you can see it's nice and easy to use, and then presents you a nice, easy to load space. So with that parcel shelf removed, you can see actually quite a practical little area. It's not really deep, but that's just because the car's not very long. So the actual space is quite easy to use. They've got no load lip here at all, so really easy to move things in. One thing you will see here though is this kind of well, which is necessary for the battery. So that's a little bit of an oversight, because it means that, you know, wider items you're going to potentially snag there, or they're going to have to sit at a bit of an angle. But yeah, I guess you kind of, they may do with what they had with that situation. So underneath the boot floor, of course, you've got the jack, and there's a few little areas to put things. So not the deepest well or anything like that. There's no special features, but what I'll be glad to tell you is there are a few little hooks and things back here. Obviously you've got your tethers for your ISOFIX, fairly straightforward to use. It is a 60-40 split as well, so I can just lean in here, push this down, that goes down nice and easily. So you'll notice there is a little bit of a ridge here, but it's not too bad. The carpet is designed to make it a little bit easier for you to load things in there, so it's not terrible. One thing to note though is the seat belts will snag if you try to put them up with one hand, so that is a little bit annoying. You just have to make sure these stay out of the way when you put those seats up. So yeah, fairly practical space, but the MG ZS does offer a slightly larger and more practical boot area. It's also worth noting the Velcro on the back of this tyre repair assembly is already ruining the carpet on this brand new 26 plate car, so a little bit too strong maybe. So overall, pretty good for the money in terms of equipment levels and things like that. Let's get it out on the road and see what it's like to drive. So out in the Tiggo 4, and what I will say to you is refinement isn't too bad for this price at all. There's not too much noise in here in terms of road and tyre noise, and also noise through these windows. I was expecting it to be a little bit more rattly, but everything feels pretty well screwed together and isolated. No, it's not a Rolls Royce in terms of sort of isolation of sound and vibration and things like that, but you don't expect it to be at this price. And what it does is offer you a pretty decent driving experience for your day-to-day. The ADAS stuff, whilst good, is quite intrusive, I must say. Obviously, as you try to stray lanes, it tugs me back in quite harshly, but obviously that can all be adjusted in the menus and that kind of thing. And then you get your bings and bongs for your speed warnings, which again, it's just par for the course in 2026, isn't it? So you can't really complain too much. But what I will say is that this drivetrain is pretty good. So National Limit Road now, put my foot down, it does take a second to respond, and it's not an instant shove of torque. That's the one thing I will say in this eco mode, is that it does kind of take a little bit of time to get going, because it uses the electric motor for the most part, and then it kicks the petrol engine in at the very last second, even when you plant the throttle. Obviously things change a little bit if I put it into its sportier mode. Everything becomes a little bit more violent, and that engine can really scream, and in that instance it can sound a little bit gruff. You know, if I just put my foot down, I'm at 50 now, if I put my foot down, it takes a good few seconds to respond to get to 60. So that is one thing that I'm not too keen on. It's just not quite got that same level of shove as the MG rivals, for example. Although you can feel the torque from the electric motor. If I stab the throttle just a little bit, I get that initial bit of torque, but it's just not quite got the legs because it's thinking about what to do. What it does mean though is, for the most part, things are really, really smooth. It means that you can potter around town on mostly kind of the electric motors, which is obviously really nice. And then as you're driving down a road like this, you're pretty much just burbling along. You can't really hear the engine because it's, again, utilising the electric torque. So it's only when I really put my foot down that you hear that engine kick in. It starts getting a little bit violent sounding. But yeah, just cruising along like this with the adaptive cruise, which you can control on the steering wheel here, it's going to be quite a pleasant experience for most for your day-to-day driving. So yeah, even in sport mode here, I'm doing 40. Let's try and get to 60, foot to the floor. There's 50, there's the noise. There's 60. So it takes just a second, and then when you let off the throttle, the engine's still working, so it takes a second to respond to your input, which is the only downside. And as for the brakes, they're pretty good, pretty responsive. You do get a little bit of body roll as you come to a complete stop, and they are a little bit sensitive under your foot. I do feel like sport mode actually ruins the car a little bit because it makes the brake feel a little bit too jolty, and it also makes that engine kick in a little bit too much of a rough way. Whereas in the eco mode, I feel like I get 90% of the same power, but it just does everything a little bit more smoothly. I'm normally a big fan of the sport mode in these sort of cars because it just sharpens everything up and makes it feel more planted. But in this, as you're kind of daily driving and cruising around, the eco mode is way better. I wouldn't even touch sport mode at all. One thing I really do appreciate is the creep in traffic. Obviously it runs off the electric motor, so you don't get any of that kind of jolting around from the combustion engine. And the brakes in eco mode at low speeds, they're not creaky at all and they're very predictable. So sitting in traffic like this, it feels like an absolute doddle. I'm gonna head quite violently around this roundabout now. I don't get an awful lot of steering input feel, but I can tell what the car's doing. And it's not understeering, it's not washing out on me, which is always good. You can just tell it's been geared more towards this plodding up and down the motorway than it has for B-road bashing, which is fine because that's the majority of the workload that this car's probably going to have in its lifetime. Once you're up to sort of motorway speeds, there is a little bit more wind noise from the front end, but obviously you can just turn the sound system up a little bit to counteract that. It's no worse than a lot of other cars in this segment. Importantly, over this drive, I've been achieving over 50 mpg, and it's still showing that I have 470 miles of range. Obviously, that's not going to be 100% accurate, but it goes to show that you can go a fair distance without having to refuel in this thing. And obviously, because it's utilising the electric motor a lot of the time, it does feel quite smooth. It's not EV smooth, don't get me wrong, but the majority of the workload under the throttle pedal feels like that kind of hybrid system doing its magic. And I do like this driving position, to be honest, like being able to just rest my elbows on a longer journey like this. It's just, yeah, it's a nice driving position. I can see out, visibility is really good. It's not a massive car, so I've got even a good view out of the back. It's just ideal, really. Let's go for another hard right-hander here. Yeah, so I'm starting to get a little bit of understeer around there now, and you can't quite feel the front wheels doing their thing. So because of the fact there's not enough texture, I can't really tell when the car's going to start washing out on me. But you know, I am pushing it very hard in that instance. It's quite an extreme circumstance, so it's not something you're going to experience in your day-to-day driving for sure. I think where it really excels though, this car, is like your under 40 mile an hour stuff, you know, pottering around towns and little villages and things like that. That's when it feels the most refined, and you can really appreciate the cabin and the level of tech that's included as standard. Yeah, setting off in traffic, I'm up to 30 mile an hour. And I can't hear the engine at all. It feels like it's been running off the electric motor for that part, which obviously is helping with the fuel economy, makes it nice and smooth, makes it nice and quiet, feels almost like an EV, which is what you want round town. The thing is, all this stuff aside, you've got to think about the price bracket, right? This is incredible value for money. And the fact that this is in the same sort of price bracket as the MG stuff, this actually undercuts the MG ZS. Although that hybrid drivetrain is a little bit nicer and more refined than this one, a little bit more punchy, this still does a very similar job in terms of economy, and the only car cheaper than this in that segment is the MG3, which is significantly smaller and doesn't have as much equipment. So this really is a really good proposition for people who just want a fairly decent sized car for the family that's really smooth to drive and really economical. It will quite often as well give you most of the power on just the electric. It's only when it's really struggling that it kicks that motor in. So even though it can sound a little bit rough, a lot of the time, when the battery has enough juice, it will try and avoid using it. So now, for example, I can plant it and the engine doesn't kick in straight away, so I don't get that noise. I just get kind of a bit of a shove of electric torque. It's not ballistic fast, but it's enough for following the traffic in front of me. with this kind of body roll and this level of delay to the steering input, it's not going to win any awards in terms of dynamics and agility compared to something like a Ford Puma, but you wouldn't expect it to. That's not the target market here. The Puma is a much more expensive car and it doesn't come with a full hybrid option, only mild hybrid, so they're just in different leagues really. This is more for someone who wants that little bit more space, a little bit more tech and a little bit more efficiency, and they're not too bothered about how the car feels on the twisty roads. What it does feel is fairly well built and fairly safe, and that's what a lot of people are looking for in this sort of car. I just don't think it can be beaten for the price really. The only real rival, as I mentioned many times, is the MG ZS, and I would encourage you to try one of those as well. But apart from that, this is kind of in a league of its own. I think as long as you go into this car with feelings of practicality and value for money, you're going to be really super impressed with it. It's not going to be thrilling, but it is going to provide you a comfortable day-to-day driving experience with all the tech that you'll need in a fairly well screwed together package. And for sort of the 20 grand price point with a good warranty, that's hard to come by in this day and age. So I think Chery have done an amazing job here, and the fact that sort of Chery Group, Chery and Moda, JQ are really starting to see some good market share in the UK and become some popular sellers, it goes to show that the big brands really do have to catch up. So it'll be interesting to see where the landscape changes over the next 6 months to a year. You get in a product from one of the big brands now that's 10, 15 grand more than this, and it's just like cheap, horrible plastic. It feels like sitting in a skip, but not here. They've just really focused on what matters to the average consumer, and I think that's really important. And I can't tell you how much nicer it is to drive in this eco mode. Everything just feels smoother, and you don't get this horrible engine whine all the time. It just does it when it needs to do it. Whereas in sport mode, I put it in sport mode, instantly the throttle response is a little bit off, and it's not even really going anywhere. No, it's all wrong. Eco mode is the way forward. The most exciting thing I think about these cars as well is once you've had a demo model sitting on the forecourt for a couple of months or whatever, you're going to end up with maybe spending, I don't know, 17 grand on it, 18 grand, something like that. It's going to knock a few thousand off, isn't it? And for a top spec car with all the bells and whistles you'll ever need, with a decent warranty for that sort of money, it's just great value, isn't it? So there we go guys, the Chery Tiggo 4. What I will say is, I think this car is incredible value for money once again, and it's just going to be a nice, comfortable, easy to live with experience for many people. And the fact that this is a full hybrid system will be super appealing to most, because most cars in this price bracket are only mild hybrid, and this is going to be not only a lot smoother to drive as it uses mostly electric motors, but also just more economical as well, which is a great proposition. It doesn't handle as well, and it's not as exciting to drive as some other cars in this segment, but that's not what its purpose is. So as long as you bear that in mind, I think you'll be very happy with it. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks to Chery for inviting me down to the event for the launch of this car. I really do appreciate it. And of course, I'll be bringing you some more car reviews from their other stuff soon. As I say, they're kind of taking over the market at the moment, and it's quite exciting because not only does it give a lot of people a good option into a new car, but it also means that the bigger brands have to think really carefully about their next move. So please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. It goes such a long way, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.